Joining us to discuss this troubling development is the Chief Executive Officer, Cowry Asset Management Limited, Johnson Chukwu. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Chukwu. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good day.
All right, Nigeria's 2022 fiscal performance report for January through April shows the total revenue stood at 1.63 trillion naira, while debt servicing stood at 1.94 trillion naira. This obviously shows a variance of about 300 billion. Would you describe Nigeria as broke?
Well, I wouldn't know what other word to use to describe the current financial situation of the country. I mean, if the interest you're paying on your borrowings is such that is higher than the total revenue you earn, then it's either you are considered as insolvent or bankrupt. Because in the first place, you have to also consider how you're going to pay those debts. Because we're not talking of principal repayment, we're talking of interest payment on those debts. So if you can't earn enough to pay your interest on debt, simply means you have to start borrowing additionally just to service debt. Because remember that as a country, or even if you're talking of institutions or households, you still have your operating expenses. So the country still has its overhead expenses to incur, which means we have to borrow. And some of us have been cried ourselves hawks on this issue that at the rate we are accommodating debt, we shouldn't be focusing on debt to GDP, we should be focusing on debt service to revenue. And we saw this itching up, and we kept crying and shouting that the country needed to stop borrowing, because if we can continue to borrow, we're going to get to this point where interest payment alone will be more than the revenue of the government. Wow. So it's no longer an issue of are we in a comfortable financial position. Clearly we are not, because we can't pay our interest on our debts.
Oh, this is really scary. But something that confuses a couple of people, is with regards to oil prices. If oil prices seem to be getting higher, how come, like other oil-producing nations, Nigeria is not experiencing higher oil revenues?
Well, interesting. Nigeria is an exception to what's happening in oil-producing countries, because we're not producing enough crude as it stands today. If you look at our May figures, Nigeria produced only about 1.024 million barrels a day. In June, it was expected that it has grown about 1.116 million barrels a day. I remember that our OPEC quota for July was about 1.799 million barrels a day. And even our OPEC quota for August, coming month, is about 1.826 million barrels a day. So we are far from even meeting our OPEC quota. Previously, this country used to produce about 2 million barrels a day, 2.2 million barrels a day. But currently, we are producing just barely 1 million barrels a day. And unfortunately for us, because we're not finding any petrol, any crude here, we're importing our entire petroleum products. So we are actually importing the refined products, spending the little foreign exchange we're making from the little crude we're exporting, importing refined petroleum products, elevated prices. We know what's happening in the international market after the Russia-Ukraine war. And to worsen matters, a lot of current production are coming from deep offshore, where we have production sharing agreement with the international oil companies. And under the production sharing agreement, the value that Nigeria gets from those production sharing agreements is quite minimal. It's not material, it's not huge, unlike if we're producing from onshore assets or shallow offshore assets. Producing from deep offshore assets means the fiscal regime that governs deep offshore production under production sharing agreement gives minimal revenue to the federal government. So these all have compounded our revenue challenge, and that's why contrary to what's happening elsewhere, we are actually suffering huge revenue shortfall to the extent that we are not earning enough to meet even interest payment obligations.
And while we're not earning enough, we still are projecting to spend 6.7 trillion on petrol subsidy in 2023. Where do you see us heading like this? As quickly, please.
I would think it's a decision we all have to take as Nigerians. Sometimes the Nigerians think that's what the benefit they're getting from being Nigerians. But I keep telling them that your conditions are deteriorating. It's a call that the government has to make. The government has deferred that decision for 18 months to the incoming government. But I think we don't have that 18 months to live under the current situation. I expect the decision will be made in a short while.
All right. Thank you very much, Johnson Chukwu. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to having another conversation with you.
My pleasure.